Okay, back. Gonna do a fuse tonight. At least a fuse tonight. This has been painted, but you probably can't see it on the camera. But I did paint it too fast. I got the first layers down pretty good, but then when I came through for the second or third layer, I laid it on a little too heavy, and it did fisheye in a few places and crinkle up. So I'll show you what I do to kind of fix that. It's a lot easier since it's white. Because well, you'll see. So I take the tape off, the masking, and now we're gonna have to lay out. I'm gonna set this aside. It can sit right there. And then this is how I do. Let's see. Now, not everybody, I don't know. Not everybody does it this way, and it's probably not even the best way, but I hate trimming. I hate trimming in the mold, and I haven't been able to figure out how to lay a pattern piece in dry, and then it just takes forever to do each piece, but it probably is a little bit better. I use templates. These are my templates for the mold. I'll use that to cut out the fiberglass. I put some saran wrap. I put some saran wrap down as a base, and then just to keep the table clean. Let me get some fabrics. Okay. Okay, there's one piece of fabric. This is, what is it? 2.5 ounce glass. Right around 2.5 ounce glass. Might be 2.3 ounce glass. And it's going to be 3 layers on the whole fuse, and then 4 layers in the first half. I'll have an extra half a layer in the front half of the plane, back to the trailing edge of the wing. I'll usually tape that down so it doesn't move, and then put the next layers on. And finally, the half layer. One more piece of tape. Okay. Which side is that? That's the left side. So I need this template. What I'll do is lay the template on while it's dry. I'm hoping you can see that. Let me walk back and make sure that it's in the frame picture. Okay, that may be a little bit better. And I'll take, where are we at? Take a pen and just kind of trace, don't have to be really close, because I don't want to get the blue ink in it, but I need to know where to put the epoxy. So that's a general area, so don't waste a lot of epoxy. Now, at this point, I'm going to go mix epoxy. So I'll be right back. I'm going to shut this off to save some. Okay, I'm mixing epoxy. All you missed was me weighing out some epoxy. Set this aside. Now, I'll put some epoxy on the cloth. Use my trusty wife's credit card. And then spread it out. Get it to soak in everywhere. Make sure that everything's wet. Okay. That's pretty good. Okay, let's see now. What I'll do is put one more. I'll use this. Sometimes I use wax paper for this top layer. Doesn't really matter. I just do it so my template doesn't get dirty, or doesn't, not dirty, but doesn't get epoxy on it. Okay, what did I say it was left? Okay, there it is. Keep it from moving, I will typically tape it down because I have a problem with it moving on me every once in a while. Okay, it's not going to go anywhere. I take the razor blade, and cut out, follow the contour of the mold of the template. Now, as you can see, the little dotted line on the template, that is the overlap in the mold. You'll see that here in a second. And my templates aren't perfect. You'll find out here when we start putting them together. And I can't remember which one it is has a little excessive overlap. We'll find out. I end up having to cut it with scissors once it's in the mold. Maybe it's both of them. Now, one thing I don't like anymore is this overlap right at the nose. I'll take care of that right now. And, you know, you can see my molds are for a glider, full nose, and pretty much all of these are going into pylon planes with a motor on the front, so you end up hacking off the whole front of the plane anyways. So the front of the doesn't really matter. So what I'm peeling off right now is the saran wrap, and that gets thrown away. Like I said, it was only there to keep it clean. That's ready now. Oh, I usually cut right through here, right through here. Here's the mold. Hope we don't run out of time through this process. I'm not going to know for sure if we do. Okay. First thing we do is I'll make some thickened epoxy. To do that, I use some micro balloons. You can see this. And micro balloons are pretty good at making the epoxy thick. It's thick, but it'll still sag. and I want it to hold in the mold, so I'll add a little Composite, just a little bit. Composite makes it not only thick, but it holds its shape like toothpaste. You know, kind of. You know, you can squeeze out a thing of toothpaste and it's not going to sag on you. That's kind of what it does. That's a little bit better. So I'll take this material and I'll put a little bit in the nose. That's a trouble area. And then right in the wing saddle, I'll put a little bit to fill that area. And then put some here, bridging where the leading edge meets the fuse. And put a little bit in the tail. These are just really sharp angles. It kind of makes it easier to fill. The other thing it's doing, where the paint fisheyed, it's filling in those fisheyes with white epoxy that is going to look like white paint once it pops out, which is kind of nice. That is pretty much it. Then I'll take, since this has some fisheyes, normally I just take this clear epoxy and just paint the inside of the mold with the clear epoxy. I'm going to put a little micro balloons in it, in this one, to turn it white. I don't really want to thicken it. It's going to thicken it a little bit. It's inevitable. But really all I want to do is turn it white. Still really thin, but now it's white. I don't normally do that. Normally I don't have. I'm a little more careful painting. So now you just paint the inside of the mold and just get it wet. You don't need a whole lot of epoxy. Just want to keep it wet. But you do want it wet. I think in my experience, it's better if it's wet. Okay. Now the inside is wet. Now you take this. Okay, I have the backing is on there, the saran wrap. When you do that, you can pull this up and it doesn't distort the fabric because it's kind of stuck to that saran wrap. And I flip it around so the saran wrap's on top. I drop it into place. My overlap is the side near the camera. So this side is going to go flush with the mold. And this isn't the side I'm going to have to trim, because that's not a bad overlap right there. So then once I get it cut mostly in, I'll peel that saran wrap off because I don't want it. Then you just, the rest of this process right now, I need to relieve this just a touch. It's really hard to cut once it's wet. The rest of this process is just tapping, either doing this to push it down or just tapping it into place to try to get rid of all the air bubbles. That is easier said than done, particularly with this method. Like I was saying before, I think I'd have less air bubbles if I did this with the fabric dry. Cut it out with the template, placed it in, and then painted it in one piece at a time. I've tried that a few times, and to be honest, I have a hard time doing it. It's a learning experience for me. And this works for me, and a few air bubbles, you know, doesn't bother me all that much. It's not really production. And actually, what I originally planned with this was a bladder system. I don't know who that is, but I can't answer the phone. One of the problems with a white mold is seeing bubbles. I can't. No, they kind of hide themselves with a mold like this, with it painted like this. Okay, what I originally was to use, I was originally planning to use a bladder, but I didn't think the process all the way through. And I need to work out a way to block this and then bladder it out. And if I could do that, I think I could remove all the or the vast majority of the bubbles in the layup. Wow. Okay, so this side of the mold, there's a piece of fabric that overlaps the whole length of it, and that's going to overlap onto the second half of the mold. The next mold is going to have a piece that overlaps. It's going to actually be on this side of the mold, but it'll overlap on this side, so it'll lay down in here when we put the mold halves together. That ain't bad. Now I get a couple some carbon toe. Get that over here. This is 6K carbon toe. I'll lay one strip in through here. Let's see. second. I got some carbon pieces to put in. I put in a piece of carbon here in the tail to keep it stiff, and a piece of unicarbon here in this portion of the tail to keep it stiff also. Okay, there's half of a layout. Next half is going to be laid up exactly the same. I'm sure the camera's going to run out of film here in a second. And I can just throw this away. Just that easy. I let this sit aside. We're going to let this and the other side sit aside for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours to go kind of green and a little hard, and then we'll put it together. So, alright, I'm going to have to work fast. I don't think I have a lot of time left on that camera. So to glue the halves together, here are the two halves. I again make some thickened epoxy. I use a little cotton flock in this one because I want a little more strength. And then I put that along the tail area because there's really no overlap on the tail. Put a little bit right here. Then I take some epoxy, thin epoxy, and run it, spread it out on the overlap section. Okay, that's wet. I need some clamps. Okay, now comes the difficult part. You got to put the molds together and not have these fabrics that are hanging out crimp. It's not necessarily real easy. This is how I do it. Kind of line them up and then tilt them so that they kind of sit in between, in the middle of the fuse with each other. Look at it, make sure it's okay. It's kind of at an angle, and then I slide them together. It's all together. I'll use my fingers here right here to make sure that these are all that the joint here is good. And let's see where we got it. I have a little wire that I use to make sure the seam lies down. It's kind of hard to do. It's actually very difficult to do with this mold because of the single opening. But I just run it back and forth. I'll tip it upside down to get it also.